Teammates, first and foremost, if this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down right to the point. And today we are going to talk about the importance as an adult, as a parent, as a guardian, as the person who is in charge of young people, and you have young people who look up to you and look at every single one of your moves. They follow you, they mimic you. You are the example of for a young person that is coming up, more in particular, a young person that's coming up in the household, and it's your responsibility to develop a household that is productive and is you're raising young people that are going to be productive. You're raising young people that are going to be doing some great, incredible things that are going to be productive members of society. We're going to talk about the importance of emphasizing and showing them how to develop backbone. All right, develop backbone. What I mean when I say developing backbone and showing backbone is not letting superiors, not letting people who come into their lives, whether they come in the form of bosses, whether they come in the form of managers, whether they come in the form of, older friends or whatever, whoever it is, you have got to make sure you do your part in showing your young people, the young people that you are responsible for, in showing them the importance of developing a backbone, developing an element to them, developing their personality. Well, let me not say their personality because that kind of develops on their own, but their mindset has to be of the mindset in which they do not let people push them around. That's what I mean in particular when I say developing and showing backbone and emphasizing the importance of having backbone when you're in conversations with people, when you're working with other people, when you're developing relationships with people. You gotta develop a strength in which you're not being taken advantage of. You're not being pushed around and told this and told that, and ultimately, like I mentioned, being taken advantage of. I'm going to dive into several examples of it today, but just off jump, it's very important that you do what you have to do. Okay, because there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of it going on in our world. You see it all day, all in our quote unquote leadership. You see it so much in the business world. You see it so much in the education world. And so much of what is going on in this world is because adults are scared to speak up. And what's happening, the ripple effect that's happening, is you're seeing young kids who are growing up who are not speaking their mind, who are not standing on any principles because they're not being taught, they're not being shown how to develop a backbone. And you see the heart, I should, the overall, just the overall personality and the willingness to stick to whatever it is you're trying to stick to as a young man and a young adult. You see that starting to slowly diminish because promises now don't mean a damn thing. Now you can go hide behind your technology, you can hide behind whatever device you have, you can say whatever the fuck it is you want to say about people behind their back, and there's no repercussions or anything like that. There's just no damn principles, and all of that is goes back to how you were raised and what you were about in the home, right? And I remember actually I got a really great example of this importance back when I was 19. I was 19 years old. All right. 19 years old. This was the first year since I was 7 years old, the first fall actually, in which I wasn't going to be a part of a football team as a player because I'd actually torn my ACL. I had just finished my freshman year in college. I had to move back home, and it was just a mess. We'll say it like that. Excuse me. It was just a complete mess because I was depressed. I was trying to figure out what my life was going to be like without having played, without being a part of a football team and all that kind of stuff. And it was really difficult for me to navigate that with my way around, especially during that fall of, I'm not this fall of 2008. Yep, because I graduated in '07. The fall of 2007, I was at Carson Newman. So that fall of 2008 was an adjustment. All right. And when it comes to football, again, I'm all about it. The way I learn business, what I do now, the work I do now, a lot of the things that I've developed because of the things that the game of football taught me, right? So during that year, the only team that I had to like cling to was my, excuse me, my hometown NFL team, which is at the time was the Washington Redskins. They now go by the Washington Commanders, right? So I was a diehard fan, a diehard Washington Redskins fan, and that was between them and the Michigan Wolverines. And back then, the '08 Michigan Wolverines were kind of in the. I'm going to be talking about Michigan in a second and later on in this episode, but because the Michigan Wolverines were so bad at that point in that particular era in 2008, and for that the Redskins weren't all that great either. It was just, look, I'm not a part of a team anymore, so I have these two programs in which I'm a fan of to really root for and ride with and all that kind of stuff. So I was like a super, super duper fan at that point. I'm a big fan as it is, but because, like I said, I wasn't playing on a team, I only had them to look to and stuff like that, right? So anyway, there was a situation where I was working. I was working at this gym named Washington Sports Club, right? And it was a Sunday. Remember, yes, it was a Sunday night game. It was a Sunday night game. And I remember I worked the entire Sunday, like during the day that morning. I think it was like during the day, and I knew I was going to be able to get off. I was going to be able to leave in time to go meet my sister at this place called Billard's for the Washington Redskins versus Cowboys game. It was the Dallas Cowboys versus Redskins. And if I'm not mistaken, it was either 4 p.m. or 7 p.m. I can't remember specific. I think it actually was a 4 o'clock game because I remember I used to work the morning. Yeah, remember I used to work the morning, and then once the later game started on a Sunday, which usually started like 4:15 or whatever, then I was able to go catch some NFL football and watch, whether I had to watch the Redskins during my shift or whatever, all that stuff. But bottom line is I was making sure I was watching all the Redskins games that year. That was the same year. I think it was Jim Zorn, if I'm not mistaken, was that year. And then the next year he got fired because he just wasn't hacking it. But Jason Campbell was the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. So that was the year. That was the year in which I was really, again, watching a lot of the Redskins games and all that kind of stuff. All right. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is because it was during that time in which I was already dressed. My shift ended and then the game started after my shift was supposed to end. However, the person, and I was working front desk at Washington Sports Club, a gym that's actually no longer in business. But I remember that it was getting close to the time that the game was going to start, and I had to drive from Bethesda to downtown Silver Spring. And I was like really rushing because I'd already had my Redskins jersey on. I was ready to go. My sister was going to be meeting me was already at the Billards that we're going to go watch the game. So I'm like, the person who was supposed to relieve me and watch the front desk, she's not there. I'm like, yo, what the fuck? Look, I put in my hours. I'm not supposed to be here. So I called my manager, and the manager, oh, yes. He goes, I'll stay for maybe like 20 or 30 more minutes. And if she's not there, then, all this kind of shit. And I'm like, no, I'm not staying. I'm not staying. I just put in my shift. So eventually I just left. I just left the front desk unattended. Luckily, there was actually a personal trainer there who I told him, look, can you just kind of cover it for a couple minutes or a couple hours or whatever? And, graciously, he told me that. And he was a Redskins fan too. And he saw me dressed, and I was like really, nervous and clutch. I'm like, I got to get to this game. Right. So he was like, yeah, man, you're good. Just go on and get out of here, whatever. And then, yeah. So then I made the game. I made the start of the game and all that kind of stuff. And it just so happened that the Redskins actually won that game. Yeah, this was that. Yeah, I remember it's coming back now because Jim Zorn. I remember people were talking about how Jim Zorn's going to be the next Joe Gibbs. And, he's doing those great things. And this is why nowadays I never get too excited about watching the Washington, now they're called the Commanders. I never get too excited to see them with a great start. All right. I don't have it in me to get excited because I saw Jim Zorn do the same thing, won a couple big games early in the season and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's another conversation for another day. Right. But anyway, what happened was I was so hyped. I was so happy when we got home because, again, I'm around my people. I'm around my Redskins fan, the Redskins nation. We just beat the Cowboys. I'm pumped, right? So my sister and I get home that night, and my sister tells my mother, she goes, your son, Ozzy, he put his job in jeopardy just to go watch the Redskins game. And, again, my sister's kind of fabricating the story as she does from time to time. But anyway, I told my mother the actual situation where it's like, look, my shift ended and the person who was there wasn't supposed to be there. So, what the hell they want me to do? I already put my hours in. I wasn't staying. And then my mother, again, she kind of debunked this kind of fabricated story that my sister told, which is I put my job in jeopardy. And she goes, yeah, no, actually, no, he's right. Show some damn backbone. If you were told you're supposed to be going at a certain hour, you're not staying, show some backbone. And I remember her specifically saying, show some backbone. And from that point on, it's created an element in me where I know whatever job it is I'm doing, whatever it is I'm doing, I know the way it's going to be beneficial to me from from the learning the skill standpoint, not necessarily because of the functionalities of the job or how much the job is paying me, or it's because I like or dislike the manager, whatever it is, but the actual thing that I'll be doing, will it be helping me when it comes to the business and the work that I'll be doing? And if I can figure that out, if I can hone these skills by doing this job, then I can figure out ways in which I can pay myself more than anybody can ever even think about paying me. And that's the power of, first of all, having a mother like mine who would emphasize the importance and emphasize the value of showing backbone in that moment. And you see the thing that I remembered, and then going out and eventually applying the situation to where now that backbone becomes something that's actually beneficial. All right. And that's where I want to get you to. That's going to be the important element of what we discussed today, because as I've grown up and now I'm a resident out here, I reside out here in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I teach at a school named the Center for Creative Education. And one of the parents, in fact, there's multiple parents that I have relationships with. Again, I've been there for so long now. I've kind of consider myself having some skin in the game, we'll say, in the education space. And even before I got into being an educator per se, I was a trainer where I dealt with a lot of parents and a lot of families, people coming in to work out. Even before that, high school football coach and college scout, doing a lot of things where I'm dealing directly with parents. And I'm here to tell you that the importance of having that backbone and showing it and displaying it in your kids, the trade-off and the reward and the reward that comes with that is you're going to start to see your kids grow. You're going to start to give your kids actual real life examples of exactly how you handle yourself in the workplace. And again, I'll give you an example, a recent example, actually the example that got this topic, got me thinking about this topic and thinking about emphasizing this topic to you guys. And I realized that I actually never did a topic on how important it is to show the backbone and to actually stand on your principles. All right. So recently at the school that I teach at, we had a situation where a parent took her daughter out of school. All right, took her daughter out of school, and this particular parent I know very well because she also is an educator. We've done work and we've like run 5Ks, and we've kind of gotten to know each other over the past year and a half since she's had her daughter in there. And we've had great conversations about the school. We've had incredible. I mean, listen, when she and I would talk outside of school, we'd have conversations about how great the school is when it comes to the element of using creativity to teach these subjects, tackle these major subjects, to have an art integrated education system where you're engaging young people and learning through arts, through creativity. So they're learning how to creatively solve problems and all that. Again, she is a creator herself. I'm not going to put her name out there or anything like that. But in it, if I was to say her name for anybody from the school is listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. In it, that incredibly creative, actually is, does some gardening, does a lot of work with kids. She's a teacher herself, right? She's an educator herself, right? So had a situation where she just wasn't a fan of the actual teacher that was teaching her daughter, which is, again, her prerogative, her right, her as a mother, as a parent, as an educator herself, it's her right to have a view or be very judgmental or have an objective view of the teacher that's teaching her daughter based on what her daughter's telling her every time she picks her up and all that kind of stuff. So you cannot get upset with her if she has concerns about what the teacher is saying or what the teacher is doing on a day-to-day basis. I get it, 1000% get it. Now, again, I don't have all of the details about how everything went down. I don't know how it went down with the principal of the school, the business owner, the CEO of the school. I don't know how all that stuff went down. Again, I wasn't in the room for these conversations. But the bottom line is, based on what I was told from her, like directly, is I have standards that I want my daughter to have. And if these standards are not being met, I'm not playing around. I'm taking my daughter out to school. And eventually, essentially, that's what she did. All right. And she got absolutely bitch slapped for it. All right. I'm talking about conversations were going on that were, I had to step in and defend her because of the element of, hey, I know this lady, I know the standards that she has when it comes to teaching and all that kind of stuff. And I had to come in to her defense and say, hey, look, if you have a kid, if you have a daughter, it's your right to have a certain standard on who you want teaching. And if you want to take your kid out, hey, you got to respect people for doing that very thing, which is ultimately what I said to her. I actually said that to her via text. And, that's the same kind of thing that I would say about her, even when, the conversations about her or the kind of the tone, we'll say it like this. Maybe being bitch slapped is a little too strong of a word, but I'll say this, the tone of the conversations regarding that situation was a little rough for my liking. All right. So, like I said, bitch slap was kind of a rough term, but the tone was kind of moving in a direction where she don't need to be thinking about taking her kids out, or it's just not fit for the kid, especially since, she was there a year ago and now you're removing the girl from her friends and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, initially, the little girl's going to miss her friends and miss her teachers and all that. But essentially, again, brings me to the point is you as a parent, you have to remove your feelings from all that shit and say, this is my child, this is my kid, and I'm here to show my kid the importance of having that backbone, developing some principles, developing some strength, and most importantly, developing some standards on how you ought to be treated. And this is the same thing I told her via text. I'll tell you guys, is I told her you ought to be proud of what you did, and there ought to be more mothers who think like that. And that's actually what kind of inspired this episode, because even before I was thinking about this episode, I was really knee deep in, as I expressed earlier, knee deep in the whole football, college football, NFL football world. Now, again, I'm recording this. It is October 2024. My Washington Commanders right now, we're off to a 4-1, is it 4-1? I believe it's 4-1 start. We only lost one game. We're the head in the NFC East. So NFL wise is looking good. But again, like I said, I don't get excited about early victories when it comes to them. I've been through too much. However, my Michigan Wolverines for this first part of the season have looked like shit, have looked like complete shit. As great as it was last year to see. And again, they made my 35th birthday the greatest birthday ever, because they actually won the national championship on my birthday. And I became a super fan of them. All right. I will ride or die with my Michigan Wolverines football program. And I'm honestly saying this, they just look really bad. They look really bad. They don't have much of a game plan. The way we won games a year ago from this recording, the way we won games in terms of that pound the rock, and JJ McCarthy could get the ball out wherever he needed to get to. But it was mostly because that offensive line was together and we were able to control the game with the run. We just don't have that anymore. And because of that, we don't have the weapons around. We don't have the quarterback situation straight. So many problems, right? So because we had just lost, again, what happened was we had just lost our second game of the season to the Washington Huskies, a team that we just fucking beat. All right. We just beat them in a national championship, and then we go to Washington and get our ass kicked by them, a team that really isn't that good, and they beat our ass. It could have been a whole lot worse than it actually was, right? We actually had our chances to win the game, but that's besides the point. We lost the game, and pretty much I'm not really expecting us to go to the playoffs. The only thing that will make the season worthwhile is to go to Columbus and pull the ultimate upset against Ohio State. Then I'd be, completely happy. If y'all can give me that, I'm happy. All right. So, but anyway, I watched that game and I was just struggling. I was pissed off because I'm trying to figure out answers. And the next day I talked about how I did a video about how it's officially time to rebuild as a Michigan football program, which is fair. Again, we've had 3 straight Big Ten championships. It's been a great run. Again, we lost a lot to graduation. So I knew, look, hey, realistically speaking, we got to expect that this is going to be one of those years where we're just not as dominant as we were the past 3 years, right? So they signed a new quarterback. They signed a new quarterback. His name is Jaden Davis. All right. At one point, I believe he was ranked as the best quarterback in the entire nation. And there's, I guess, a situation where he wasn't ranked as high throughout his high school career. There was just a lot of controversy as he was coming out of, I believe it's Providence Day in Carolina, right? And he is currently on Michigan's roster. However, they are not playing him. As bad as this offense looked, they are still not playing him. And I got to doing more research, and it actually was rumored that he would. Now, this is nobody knows if it's the truth or not. This is just a rumor. Now, just so I'm clear, but it was actually rumored that the Michigan Wolverines coaching staff promised his parents that he was going to spend 1 year redshirting and making sure he developed, making sure his body was right. They weren't just going to throw him out there and expect him to, be the JJ McCarthy right off the bat. There was going to actually be a developmental process. And I got to thinking about if that was true or not. And I went on record saying, hey, I hope it is true. Even as a Michigan fan, I hope it is true. And I hope they don't just throw this kid out there and expect the problem to just go away. I hope that it is true, because as big of a fan as I am, I would have become an even bigger fan if they can be that program that keeps their promises to parents, that keeps their promises to kids, and that more so thinks about the development of the young man versus trying to, salvage what's left of one season, which is, again, would be really just a small thing compared to what he can be as he develops, if he develops the right way. So I hope it is true, and I hope they do keep that promise and they don't just throw him out there in the season. And as I was thinking about, how I'm going to address that and talk about that, it took me back to the bigger subject in which I'm discussing with you now, which is showing your kid that you can stand up to authority, showing your kids the importance of developing backbone. Because as I was doing my research and I was looking up his recruiting process, and he finally committed to Michigan, his father, I believe his name is Jeremiah Davis, he did an interview, and he said directly, look, I had the conversation with Coach Harbaugh. I had the conversation with the former offensive coordinator, Matt Weiss. We had these conversations, and he was saying how direct and upfront and deliberate these conversations were with the Michigan coaching staff. And the one thing that he said that I really want to, the reason I'm pointing this out, and I'll close you guys out soon with this concept, is he said in this interview, he said, my son, Jaden Davis, again, who's the quarterback, is watching all of this. He's watching me interact with these quote unquote big time coaches. He's watching me interact with them. He's being shown how to ask these tough questions, how to have these uncomfortable conversations. He's being shown, hey, look, I have standards. I have certain things in place that I want, and it's up to you guys to meet these standards and start learning about how to posture and be strong on your principles. He's seeing these things, and that's shining the example. All right. And that is what's going to be important, regardless of whether he's successful on the field or not. And again, as a fan, I pray to God that he is. But at the same time, I'm more so concerned about this young man using this game in a positive way. And it can only happen when you have parents like the one I just described, who is going to have these difficult conversations with coaches, who is going to have some backbone, like my mother had mentioned, right? And then your kids, your young people are able to see these things, and then they start to develop into their own place in this world and cultivate and carve out a lane for themselves in which they can be productive. That's the best way to do it. In fact, I'll close you out with this. Again, I promise you I'll close, but this is another important element because it actually took me back to another legend. You probably heard of his name is Tim Tebow, right? And I remember this was during I was heavy into the college scouting world, and I was meeting different parents of athletes, trying to help them with recruiting packages and all that. So I've been knee deep in this world. Trust me, I know it. I know the ins and outs of it very, very well, right? So I read Tebow's first book. He put out a book titled Through My Eyes, and it was written around, I want to say, his rookie year, around his rookie or sophomore year when he was playing for the Denver Broncos. No, I think it was actually his rookie year because he was still talking about all the controversy that was going on with him in the draft and his release of the football and all that kind of stuff, right? So he had made it a point at the beginning of that book to talk about how his parents taught him everything that I'm discussing with you today. And in it, when you talk to these coaches or the authority or boss and managers or whatever it is, you have to have the backbone, right? You have to have the posture. You have to have the ability to tell them clearly what you're looking for, what it is you want, and how you want to do things, and allow that to be your standards as you move forward to the next level. That's what you got to teach. And it's so very important, because this is not something that's going to come naturally to a kid. It's going to come after they see the adults that are raising them do it the right way, or do it a certain way. As you can tell, as you told it, as I explained to you at the beginning, it was when I heard my mother kind of, debunk this fabrication that my sister was putting out there, as if I would leave the job, put my job in jeopardy. And then she said, wait a minute, no, you got to actually show some backbone, because you put in your hours and it was time for you to enjoy the game. You go leave. It's not fair for them to just tell you, okay, you stay another hour when you have things to do. That's the point. And you, my friend, you as a person that's listening to this, you have to be the one to show that backbone to your young people. And that's how society moves forward. All right. All that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.